Have you ever wondered what would happen if One Piece had no plot armor? Would the Straw Hats even make it past the East Blue, or would the story end way earlier than you think? Well, I went through every arc and I removed every moment where plot armor saved someone. So let's start at the very beginning. Shanks, a Yonko-level pirate, loses his arm to a Sea King. You see, this is a man who would later clash evenly with Whitebeard, scare off an admiral with a look, and stop an entire war by just showing up. This man loses an arm to a fish. Either he one-shots the Sea King and keeps his arm, or Luffy drowns and the story ends at chapter 1. However, let's say Luffy survives childhood. The East Blue would go mostly the same up until Baratie. Alvida, Morgan, Buggy, Kuro, none of them are strong enough to kill Luffy without plot armor. These are fair wins. The crew forms naturally. However, at Baratie, Mihawk shows up, and this is where we get the first real case of plot armor for Zoro. You see, Zoro challenges the world's greatest swordsman to a duel. Mihawk could end this fight in one swing of his black blade. Instead, he pulls out a tiny knife, a knife he uses to pick his teeth. He fights Zoro with a pocket knife because he doesn't consider him worth using a real sword on from the beginning. And even with the pocket knife, Mihawk still wins. He slashes Zoro across the chest with Yoru at the end, but deliberately chooses not to kill him. He sees potential and lets him live. Without plot armor, Mihawk just kills him, instead of just sparing him the entire time. The world's greatest swordsman doesn't show mercy to a random rookie from the East Blue. He swings once and it's over. Zoro dies at Baratie, and the Straw Hats lose their swordsman before the Grand Line. You see, Luffy recruited Zoro first, before Nami, before Usopp, before anyone. Zoro was the foundation of this crew. Without him, Luffy has no first mate, no second strongest fighter, and no one to keep the crew grounded when things go sideways. Every enemy he would have held off while Luffy fought the main villain, all of that disappears. After Baratie, the rest of the East Blue would go mostly the same. Arlong is a fair fight, actually. Krieg is a fair fight. The crew picks up Nami, and the journey continues. However, at Loguetown, things get worse. Buggy has Luffy locked on the execution platform, the exact same platform where Roger was executed 22 years earlier. The blade comes down, and at the exact moment it should connect with his neck, a random bolt of lightning strikes the platform and destroys it. Not a character's attack, not a planned rescue, a bolt of lightning at the exact right second. Without plot armor, Luffy dies at chapter 99. There's no indication that Dragon controlled the lightning bolt, just that he was there. However, Luffy isn't the only one at risk here. While he's on the platform, Zoro is in a sword shop testing the Sandai Kitetsu, a cursed blade that kills every swordsman who wields it. To test his luck and determination, Zoro throws the sword spinning into the air and holds out his bare arm. If his luck wins, the blade misses. If the curse wins, he loses an arm. The blade spins past without touching him, and without plot armor, the curse wins. Zoro would lose an arm before the Grand Line even starts. No more 3-sword style, just 2, meaning that the technique that makes Roronoa Zoro unique would be gone forever, and he'd have no one to blame but himself, throwing a sword into the air. Who does that? You see, we're not even at the Grand Line yet, and Luffy should be dead twice, and Zoro should be dead at least once, and crippled at least another. But let's keep going. The crew enters the Grand Line. Whiskey Peak and Little Garden would go mostly the same. However, Alabasta is where Luffy genuinely should have died. Not might have died, should have died. He fights Crocodile 3 separate times and loses the first 2 badly. In fight 1, Crocodile impales him with his hook and buries him in quicksand. Robin, who is working for Crocodile and has zero reason to help Luffy at the moment, randomly saves him. In fight 2, Crocodile poisons him and leaves him to die. No antidote, no doctor anywhere nearby. Luffy somehow recovers though and comes back for a 3rd round. Without plot armor, the quicksand or the poison finishes him. Just pick one. And then there's Pell. Now this one, come on. A bomb is about to detonate over the capital and kill millions of people. Pell grabs the bomb, flies it into the air, and it explodes point blank in his face. Everyone mourns him as a hero. A few chapters later, he shows up alive, completely fine. You see, this is the moment that started the running joke that actually no one dies in One Piece. A man took a bomb to the face and walked it off. Remember this, it's gonna be important later. Now think about what would happen if Luffy actually dies in Alabasta. Well, I mean, besides for the end of the series. You see, without Captain Luffy's charisma holding the crew together, there would be no reason for any of them to stay. Zoro doesn't want to be a captain, he wants to be the world's greatest swordsman, and he doesn't need a crew for that. He'd leave and continue training alone, chasing Mihawk across the Grand Line fine until one of them kills the other. Nami might go back to Kokoyashi Village and spend the rest of her life drawing maps of the oceans that she'd never sail again. Usopp would return to Syrup Village and go back to telling lies about adventures he'd never have, besides for the ones he actually did have, and no one could tell the difference. Except this time, one of those real stories would end up with his captain dying in the desert. Sanji would walk back into the Baratier and cook meals for strangers, knowing that one crew worth cooking for is gone, and Chopper would stay on Drum Island, convinced that the outside world is just as cruel as he always feared. You see, Luffy is the only reason any of these people left their homes in the first place. Every single one of them could either do something different or go back to the life they were living before, meaning that within weeks, the Straw Hat Pirates could dissolve like they never existed. Vivi would lose her country, Baroque Works would complete the takeover of Alabasta, the princess who begged for help and found the one crew crazy enough to fight a warlord for a stranger would watch it all collapse, because the boy she believed in is buried under the desert he came to save her from. However, let's just keep going and bring them back, because the story only gets worse from here. Now, before we get into the arcs where the plot armor gets truly absurd, I want to quickly tell you guys about Enies Lobby. 7 rookies invade a world government judicial island with over 10,000 soldiers, elite CP9 assassins, and 3 layers of security. Every Straw Hat wins their individual fight against agents who have trained in Rokushiki their entire lives. Nami, a navigator with no combat training, beats Khalifa. Chopper, a ranger who's barely fought before, beats Kumadori. And Luffy, who is running on fumes at this point, beats Rob Lucci, the strongest CP9 agent in history, a man who killed 500 hostages as a child because he considered them weak. You see, every single one of these fights should have ended differently. These are government assassins trained from childhood. However, every Straw Hat wins anyway, and they're not that strong at this point. Then a buster call is triggered. 5 vice admirals, 10 warships, the same firepower that erased Ohara and killed every man, woman, and child on that island. Body count at Enies Lobby after the buster call, 0. Not one Straw Hat, not one of Frankie's workers, not a single shipwright. An entire fleet designed to delete islands fails to kill a single person, meaning that the most destructive military operation the world government has accomplished literally nothing. And then the Going Merry shows up, a ship that was literally falling apart, that every shipwright said was beyond repair, sails itself across the ocean with no crew, and arrives at the exact right moment. Because the ship had a spirit, you see. It pilots itself to its crew to save it. That's not plot armor, that's divine intervention. Without plot armor, the buster call would kill at least half the crew. The Merry wouldn't appear, there would be no escape route. Robin would be recaptured and sent to Impel Down. You see, Robin is the only person in the world who can read poneglyphs, meaning that the world government would either execute her or lock her away forever to make sure that nobody ever learns the true history. They've tried before. The woman who spent 20 years running, who finally found people willing to die for her, would be dragged right back into the darkness that she escaped from. And Luffy's declaration of war against the world government, the moment when he told Sogeking to shoot down their flag, would mean nothing. The government would just prove that nobody challenges them and survives. Thriller Bark. After defeating Gecko Moria and the ancient giant oars, the crew is completely spent. Luffy is unconscious, and that's when Kuma appears. He offers a deal. Spare the crew if someone takes all of Luffy's accumulated pain. Every broken bone, every injury, compressed into a single bubble. Sanji steps up first, however, Zoro knocks him unconscious. Zoro steps into the bubble and absorbs the pain of Luffy. Kuma just gives him a small taste, just a fraction. The impact sends him crashing backward, coughing blood, and that was just a sample. Zoro asks for the rest anyway. Sanji finds himself standing alone in a massive pool of blood. The trees are destroyed, the ground is cratered. Zoro is barely conscious, standing through nothing but willpower. Sanji asks what happened. Nothing happened. You see, the damage transferred to Zoro is not survivable. He was already half dead from fighting oars. The blood loss alone should have killed him in minutes. Without plot armor, Zoro dies on Thriller Bark, standing up, covered in blood, and just racked with pain because it just completely overcame his body. And nothing happened becomes the last words he ever says. Luffy would wake up the next morning and find his first mate, the man who had been with him since the very first island, dead in a pool of blood after taking all of the pain at once. He would never find out why. No one would tell him what Zoro did. You see, Zoro took Luffy's pain just so that Luffy could keep going. He sacrificed himself in secret. And the cruelest part is that Luffy would spend the rest of his life not knowing that his first mate died for him. The promise Zoro made at Baratier, "I will never lose again. Is that okay, King of the Pirates?" would die with him, and the dream of becoming the world's greatest swordsman would be over before it really began. At Sabaody, or Shabandi, however you prefer, Kizaru shows up and starts dismantling the crew one by one. He's moving at the speed of light. No one can touch him. And then Silver's Rayleigh appears. You see, the Pirate King's right-hand man just happens to be living on this island. The second strongest member of Roger's crew, retired and working as a ship coder, is sitting in a bar a few miles from where the Straw Hats are about to die. Without plot armor, Rayleigh isn't there at the time. Kizaru kills or captures every single Straw Hat on Sabaody. After Rayleigh saves them, Kuma scatters the crew across the world. However, he sends each one to the exact island that would make them stronger. Zoro to Mihawk, the man he needs to surpass, Sanji to the Okamas, where he'd learn techniques he'd never train willingly to do, Nami to a weather science island, Chopper to an island of medicinal plants, and Luffy lands on Amazon Lily, right next to Rayleigh again, who personally trains him for 2 years. You see, that's not bad luck. That's the universe bending itself around Luffy to make sure that he survives, or Kuma doing it very intelligently on purpose. So every single crew member conveniently ends up in the perfect training ground for their specific weakness, meaning that the attack that separated them was secretly making them stronger the whole time. Impel Down. Luffy breaks into the world's most secure prison to save Ace. Magellan, the warden, poisons him with a toxin so deadly it should kill him in minutes. Luffy is melting from the inside out. His body is shutting down organ by organ. However, Ivankov shows up and injects him with healing hormones that somehow cure a poison that has never been cured before. The treatment takes 10 hours and is described as having a near zero survival rate. Luffy survives. Of course he does. This one was presented to us. And then there's Bon Clay. You see, Bon Clay stays behind at the gates of justice to open them for Luffy's escape. He faces Magellan alone, knowing that he's going to die. This is a man who befriended Luffy in the span of a few hours and then chose to sacrifice everything for that friendship. He stands at the gates, screaming Luffy's name as the door closes between them. Without plot armor, Bon Clay dies right there. And that sacrifice would have been one of the most heartbreaking moments in the entire series. And then there's Marineford. You see, the plot armor here is at its absolute maximum on purpose, and I need to go through the saves one by one because the sheer number of them is absurd. Mihawk, the strongest swordsman alive, swings his black blade directly at Luffy, a blade that can cut through icebergs. Someone pushes Luffy out of the way at the last possible second, and he survives. Smoker pins Luffy to the ground with his sea stone weapon, completely draining his devil fruit powers. Hancock randomly intervenes and kicks Smoker away. Aokiji finally freezes the entire ocean around Luffy, trapping him in ice. A random wave cracks the ice and frees him. Kizaru fires a laser beam directly at Luffy's face at light speed. Ivankov deflects it with a Hellwink. Akainu, a man whose body is literally made of magma, throws a killing blow at Luffy. Jinbei throws himself in front of it and takes a magma fist straight through his chest, and survives. You see, this guy can take a magma fist through the torso and just walk it off, of course. Then Crocodile shows up, the same man who tried to murder Luffy twice in Alabasta, the man who buried him in quicksand and poisoned him and left him to die in the desert. And this man just randomly decides to save Luffy from Akainu, just because he had a change of heart, just because he didn't want the Marines to feel satisfied. And throughout all of this, Ivankov is pumping hormones into Luffy that are literally burning years off his lifespan just to keep his heart beating. Every injection takes time off the end of Luffy's life that he would never get back. And even that isn't enough. He just still needs every single one of these saves to happen at the exact right order at the exact right time. So there's a lot of lucky moments here that only plot armor could defend. Remember, this is pre-time skip Luffy too. No haki, no gear fourth, no advanced techniques of any kind. He's a rubber man with above average physical stats walking into a war between admirals, warlords, and Yonko commanders. These are people who reshape geography with a single punch. One serious hit from any of them doesn't just beat Luffy, it erases him. He has absolutely no business being on this battlefield, meaning that the only reason he's still breathing even when they were all focusing on him is because the story wouldn't let him stop at this point. And then, despite all of that protection, despite every save and every miracle and every convenient intervention, Ace dies. Akainu's fist goes right through his chest. Ace falls forward into Luffy's arms, and the boy who punched a celestial dragon on live television, who declared war on the world government, who fought his way through Impel Down and across an entire battlefield of admirals just to reach his brother, can't do anything but hold him. You see, Pell survived a bomb. Igaram survived an explosion. Pagaya survived Enel's lightning. Over and over, characters who should have died came back alive, meaning that by the time Marineford happens, you genuinely believed Ace would have survived that too. The plot armor had always been there. Every time someone was about to die, something saved them at the last second. So it would save Ace, right? It had to. And it didn't. And that's why that scene broke you. Not just because Ace died, but because Oda spent 500 chapters teaching you that death doesn't exist in this world. Everyone gets lucky. And then he proves you wrong and switches it up. Without plot armor, of course, Marineford would have been even worse. Ace dies, Luffy dies, Jinbei dies, Whitebeard dies. Garp would lose both of his grandsons in a single day. The hero of the Marines, the man who cornered the Pirate King, would sit in the rubble and realize that his entire bloodline is now gone. Dragon would lose his only son without ever telling him who he is. That conversation would never happen. And Shanks would arrive too late and find the Straw Hat lying in the dirt next to a cold body, meaning saying that the promise from Fuchsia Village, the entire reason Shanks gave up his arm, the bet he placed on the next generation, would die on the same battlefield where the previous king's son was executed. The hat would be buried with Luffy, and no one would ever wear it again. And that's the thing. Oda could have let all this happen. He proved with Ace that he knows how to write a death that breaks you. There are other main characters he could use. Every survived explosion, every miraculous recovery, every impossible escape, all of it was for that one moment where he took the plot armor away from a character, and you never recovered. Click on this video where I go through everyone's reaction if Luffy's execution is announced. Go on, click it.